Have you ever just looked around and wondered, why are there so many different kinds of living things? I mean, from the tiniest insect to a giant blue whale, life on Earth is like this enormous, incredible puzzle. Well, today, we're diving into the story of the man who found the key to solving that puzzle, Charles Darwin.
So this was the big question that really got under Darwin's skin. He was obsessed with the why of it all. Why do we have lions and tigers? Why do some birds have these tiny, delicate beaks while others have massive, powerful ones? This one question started him on an adventure that would completely change the way we understand the world.
All right, so let's meet young Charles Darwin. He was born in England way back in 1809, and, well, he wasn't exactly what you'd call a star student. His family had big plans for him to become a doctor, but Charles, he had other ideas.
Yeah, he was just completely fascinated by nature. So when his family packed him off to medical school, it was kind of a disaster. He found the lectures incredibly boring, and he absolutely hated the sight of blood. So he dropped out. For him, the real classroom was outside, collecting beetles and studying the world around him.
Okay, this is where the story really kicks into high gear. In 1831, when Darwin was just 22 years old, he got the chance of a lifetime. He was invited to be the official naturalist on a ship, the HMS Beagle, which was about to set off on a mission to map the coast of South America. For 5 whole years, the Beagle was his home and his laboratory. And get this, he was seasick almost the entire time. But that didn't stop him. He collected thousands and thousands of samples of plants, animals, rocks, and fossils, and he filled notebook after notebook with his incredible observations.
But of all the places he visited, the most important was a tiny, remote group of volcanic islands out in the Pacific Ocean, the Galapagos. It was here that Darwin noticed something really strange. The animals here were unique, but they also seemed to be slightly different from one island to the next.
He started paying really close attention to these little birds that we now call Darwin's finches. He saw that on one island, where the main food was these super tough nuts and seeds, the finches had these powerful, thick beaks that were perfect for cracking them open.
But then, on a different island just nearby, the finches were eating insects hiding in tree bark, and their beaks were thin and pointy, almost like a pair of tweezers. It was basically the same kind of bird, but with a beak that was perfectly designed for the food available on its specific island. And that's when a radical idea started to form in his mind. What if all these finches weren't created separately? What if they all came from one single ancestor? So when Darwin finally got back to England, he didn't just forget about his trip. No way. He spent the next 20 years locked away with his notes and his samples, trying to figure out the how. How did these changes actually happen? He was looking for the secret mechanism behind it all.
And he found it. He called his big idea natural selection. It's a pretty simple concept when you break it down. Organisms that have traits that make them better suited to their environment have a better chance of surviving, having babies, and passing those helpful traits along.
You can think of it in 4 steps. First, there's variation. Just look around. No two individuals are exactly alike. Second, competition. In any environment, there are limited resources, which means there's a struggle to survive. Third, survival of the adapted. The individuals with the traits that give them an edge in that struggle are more likely to make it. And finally, inheritance. Those survivors pass their winning traits on to their kids. Over millions of years, this process can create entirely new species.
Now, to help explain this, Darwin used an analogy he called artificial selection. Think about how humans breed dogs or horses. We pick the traits we like, maybe a faster horse or a fluffier dog, and we breed those individuals. Darwin realized nature does the exact same thing, but instead of a human making the choice, the selector is the environment. And the goal isn't just a nice trait, it's straight up survival. Darwin knew his idea was a really big deal, and that it would be super controversial, so he didn't rush to publish it. He spent 2 decades carefully and quietly building a mountain of evidence to make sure his case was absolutely rock solid. I mean, just look at this timeline. He gets back from his voyage in 1836 and spends the next 20 years working on his theory. Then, in 1858, something amazing happens. He gets a letter from another naturalist, Alfred Russel Wallace, who had been working halfway around the world and had come up with the exact same idea. That was the push Darwin needed. A year later, in 1859, he finally published his famous book, On the Origin of Species, and it sold out on the very first day. This quote really nails the core of Darwin's idea. We often hear the phrase survival of the fittest, and we think it means the strongest or the fastest. But that's not quite right. It's really about being the most adaptable, the one that fits best into its specific environment. That's the real secret to survival. And Darwin backed up his theory with tons of evidence. He pointed to fossils, which show how life has changed over millions of years. He introduced this beautiful idea of the tree of life, where all living things are related, branching off from a common ancestor. That idea explains so much, like why a human arm, a bat's wing, and a whale's flipper all have the same basic bone structure. They're just different versions of the same original blueprint. So, why should we care about some guy from the 1800s? Well, because his idea isn't just a history lesson. It is the absolute foundation of all modern biology, and believe it or not, it affects our lives every single day. So, the end result of natural selection is what we call an adaptation. Think about a polar bear's white fur. That's an adaptation for camouflage in the snow. Or a cactus's spines, which are an adaptation to protect it from animals in the desert. Every living thing you see is just a beautiful bundle of adaptations. And here's why it matters to you. Understanding evolution helps scientists create medicines to fight viruses and bacteria that are constantly changing. It's why we need a new flu shot every year. It helps us grow crops that can survive in a changing climate, and it's essential for people working to save endangered species. It is the one idea that connects all of life science. Darwin never stopped working and studying for the rest of his life. When he died in 1882, the scientific world knew it had lost a giant. He was given one of the highest honors possible in Britain. He was buried in Westminster Abbey, a final tribute to the man who gave us a new way of seeing our world and our place within it. What Darwin really taught us is that life is not a fixed thing. It's a dynamic, constantly changing story of survival and adaptation. Which leaves us with a really fascinating question to chew on. If everything is always changing, where is this incredible puzzle of life going next?